Chapter 3 Media Consumption and Advertising. Hyundai tells us that their cars make sense. Apple Computers offers us the power to be our best, and most of us don't believe a word of it. The fact is, when all is said and done, most people don't believe, don't remember, don't even notice most advertising. This has always been so and will always be so. The vast majority of advertising is ineffective and inefficient. And yet, there is a direct connection between a society's or individuals' levels of exposure to advertising and the levels of consumption. How can this be? If advertising is inefficient, if 90% of all advertising is neither seen nor remembered by most people, according to surveys, if 2 minutes after being exposed to a particular message or brand I can no longer remember either the brand or the message, then where's the connection? How does something so banal and benign impact my consumption patterns and habits? The message cited above for Hyundai automobiles, quote, cars that make sense, has little or no effect either upon our personal lives or even Hyundai sales overall. And we could say the same thing about thousands of other individual and isolated advertiser efforts. But the Hyundai advertising, combined with Apple Computers advertising, combined with advertising for Tide detergent and Chivas Regal and RCA and Johnson's Floor Wax and the limited time specials at your local department store or supermarket has a very powerful collective effect indeed. It instructs us to buy. And it gives us, via light-hearted entertainment, permission to ignore the long-term consequences of our purchasing decisions by suggesting to us that we should not take any of these too seriously. We shouldn't take a spilled glass of water too seriously either, but a flood is a totally different matter. Advertising's real message, to buy and to buy ever more, to replace what we have rather than repair what we have, at one time served us well. When we were smaller in numbers, when we were still growing, still searching for a collective identity, when personal prosperity was touted as the primary reason for being alive, property the only form of wealth, and when we were naive enough to believe it all. Consumption and the ability to consume, choosing our livelihoods on the basis of whether or not it provided us with that ability, was not only a way of life, it was a respectable one at that. But we are no longer small in numbers, we are no longer that naive. We can plainly see that advertising's collective power and our collective response to it has had and continues to have a profound and adverse effect upon our personal lives and upon the planet we share. But pointing a finger at the advertising industry will change nothing. Wishing and hoping that the advertising industry will lose its innocence and suddenly leap into modern times in recognition of the situation we're all in is futile. And while the advertising industry is part and parcel of an industrial civilization now in decline, this doesn't mean we should expect the number of advertising methods and collective power of those methods to also decline in the very near future. If anything, it means we can expect an increase in the number of those methods. For the advertising industry, along with the main body of industrial society, is struggling for survival. It may be drowning, but it has not yet sunk. And in a last-ditch effort to save itself, it will flail about more wildly and make more noise than ever, as we might expect from any drowning individual. No, what must change is us. What must change is how we see advertising in the context of the modern moment. We must recognize that its influence upon our lives and our well-being is in direct proportion to the amount of exposure in our lives, and that this exposure is an event unto itself, an experience separate from whether or not we respond to or believe individual messages. High consumption has far more impact upon our environment than type of consumption. Buying much less and driving much less is better than just switching from plastic to paper or from normal unleaded to super unleaded. One of the first steps we must take towards consuming fewer goods is to consume less advertising.